Have you ever wondered what social media is doing to your brain, your children's brain, the brains of your friends and your loved ones? Well, I'm going to unpack that for you today. Stay tuned. I get a lot of questions about social media. What do I think of social media? What do I think social media is doing to the brain? And honestly, we don't have a lot of scientific data yet because social media hasn't been around long enough. But I believe we're going to find social media does to the brain exactly what television does to the brain, but much more enhanced. It's going to have a more magnified effect. Let me explain. So, when I was growing up, television was often linked to hypnosis. Now, we didn't have enough understanding of the brain yet to know why, but we do now know. In order for hypnosis to be effective, there has to be a downregulation of the prefrontal cortex, specifically a part of the prefrontal cortex known as the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Now, this part of the brain, which we use for planning and kind of executing ideas, is really important in what we call cognitive control. It is a part of the brain that helps us know whether or not we need to have an emotional reaction to something, or maybe we can think through our responses before we act. So it's a critical part of the brain. What happens in hypnosis, in order for hypnosis to be effective, this part of the brain has to down regulate, effectively go offline, and other parts of the brain take over. If the person is not able, not everybody does allow their dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the DLPFC, to go offline. And in those folks, they can't be hypnotized. Well, the same thing happens in television. In order for us to enjoy television, this structure, it's part of the prefrontal cortex, must go offline. The DLPFC, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, must downregulate. Otherwise, everything that we watch is going to seem like impossible. We wouldn't be able to enjoy Sesame Street because there's no giant talking yellow birds. That part of our brain has to be circumvented so that our limbic system can enjoy what we're watching. That's what happens in entertainment television. That prefrontal cortex in general, but the DLPFC specifically, downregulates the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain, upregulates so we can enjoy it. And now we're being entertained. And because we're being entertained, our brain says, oh, this is pleasurable. We want to remember this, so we do it again. So it gives us a little spritz of dopamine so that our learning and memory centers say, okay, got it. I'll remember this. We'll do this again. And so now we're being rewarded for taking that DLPFC, that critical thinking part of the brain, offline so that we can enjoy something. And this is why there's really a difference between when somebody asks me, is television good or bad? Well, it depends on what kind of television you're watching. Same thing with children. So, something to think about here as I'm talking about this in young people, so the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until somebody is in, depends on the study that we're looking at, mid 20s. Some studies suggest as late as 30. So for young people, they're more susceptible to suggestion because that part of the brain is not yet fully developed. And that's also true of older adults who may have already begun to experience some um, degradation in the gray matter of that prefrontal cortex. So they're more vulnerable to the suggestion that happens in entertainment television. I love me some Patsy Cline. I'm going to go on a little tangent here, but bear with me. I love me some Patsy Cline. I grew up on these old country classics, Tammy Wynette, Tanya Tucker. I loved those genres of music. And early in my marriage, I realized after a few years of marriage, I had beliefs about marriage and the roles of women that came from some of those early country songs. You know, Patsy Cline said, "You have to just stand by your man." Dolly Parton sang this song about Jolene, and we're like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. You know, you cheat on me, I'm just going to love you through it." Well, that is because of the way that suggestion was allowed to shape the way I thought about love and marriage. That's how we develop mythologies a lot of times is through those kinds of um, that downregulation in the DLPFC and an upregulation in the entertainment parts of our brain. So for children, if they're watching more educational television, that will help develop that prefrontal cortex. But if they're watching a lot of entertainment television, it will keep them in that limbic system and can actually make it so they don't develop their prefrontal cortex through a normal trajectory. Back to what I think of social media. The same thing is happening on social media, I believe. When we're scrolling on our phones, if we're learning a lot of things, if we are being more stimulated in terms of ideas that keep us critically thinking, then it, in a moderate amount, is probably okay. But if we are doing a lot of entertainment or or mixing entertainment with education, we're at risk because what happens is you watch a couple funny videos, your DLPFC has gone offline. Now you're hanging out here in the limbic system. The critical thing that says, I don't really buy that, is quiet. And then after a couple funny videos or things that were just, maybe musically entertaining or I have a dance background, so I always fall for those videos where people are dancing on the street. After a couple of those, now our brain is ready for suggestion. So then you get a TikTok that comes up or a Instagram short or something that comes up and says, "Oh, by the way, you know, this doctrine about God is not true." Or you were a victim of abuse and you don't know it. And you are so vulnerable to suggestion that you bite. Your brain is values neutral. And so it just kind of goes, "Oh, okay," and buys it. So I think that we need to be really, really careful about what we consume in music, in television and movies, in the books that we read, and on social media. And we need to engage in social media so that we keep that prefrontal cortex, that specifically that dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the DLPFC, that we keep it turned on. Scripture tells us to be sober, to be vigilant, because our enemy walks around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So be encouraged in the Lord today, my brother, my sister, my forever family. And together, let's be sober and vigilant. In the meantime, until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.